Happy 4th of July, everyone. Soberoni of G&A Reviews here, and today we have a very special and patriotic servant spotlight for a very special and patriotic servant, Paul Bunyan. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 1-star servants. Now, onto Bunyan's stats. Bunyan has a max HP of 6,196 and a max attack of 6,044, but thanks to her Berserker class modifier, her real attack stat is 6,648. Unfortunately, Paul not only has the lowest HP stat among the 1-star Berserkers, but the lowest HP stat overall of any servant in the game. Thankfully though, she does have the highest attack stat of all the 1-stars. Overall, her stat spread is typical of a Berserker, heavy focus on attack but very little HP, making her a glass cannon. Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Happy Companions rank A. It increases the Buster card effectiveness of the party for 3 turns between 10 and 20%, and also increases the party's critical strength between 10 and 20%, both depending on level. Her second skill is Bean Soup Lake rank A. It restores the party's HP between 1000 and 2000 depending on level. And finally, her last skill is Popcorn Snowstorm rank B. It decreases the defense of all enemies between 10 and 20% for 3 turns, and decreases their HP recovery amount for 5 turns between 30 and 50%, both depending on level. Moving on to her passives, she only has one, Madness Enhancement rank D, which increases her Buster card effectiveness by 4%. As for her deck and Noble Phantasm, Paul has a Buster deck with Quick Arts Buster 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 and a Buster Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Marvelous Exploits. It deals heavy damage to all enemies with between a 300% and 500% damage modifier, and it also decreases their defense for 5 turns between 10 and 30% depending on overcharge. Taking a closer look at her cards, we see that her Quick card hits 3 times, her Arts hits 3 times, her Buster hits 3 times, and her extra attack hits 4 times. She has an NP gain rate of 0.67% and a star rate of 4.9%. She has good NP gain on her Arts card, but overall poor NP gain and star generating due to the triple Buster Berserker deck. You may be asking yourself, why is Oni doing a spotlight for Paul Bunyan when he never does spotlights for 3 stars? Well, have you seen Bunyan? Cute lolies are always the exception. That said though, there isn't anything particularly innovative or complex when it comes to Paul. She has the lowest HP stat in the game, and despite having the highest attack stat among 1-stars, it's still only 6,000 attack, so nothing to get excited about. But what is worth getting excited about is her otherwise well-rounded kit. Her first skill, Happy Companions, is a pretty good party buff that strengthens both the Buster damage and crit strength of your party. This skill pairs very well with Charisma since it'll stack multiplicatively and really amplify your party's overall damage output in Buster teams. Paul's second skill, Bean Soup Lake, is a small party heal. There's not much else to say here other than it's just a nice bit of extra survival. But unfortunately, the heal isn't strong enough to make a significant difference in most fights. Finally, Popcorn Snowstorm lowers enemy healing by half and lowers all enemy defense by 20%. The heal can be useful in some very niche situations, but the real major draw of this skill is the defense down. Combined with her first skill, this gives Paul the ability to have your team's Buster cards deal an additional 40% damage against all enemies, and when paired with Charisma, you're looking at an upwards of 60% bonus damage on your Buster cards. That's incredible value from a 1-star. As such, you're going to want to max out Happy Companions first, followed by Popcorn Storm, so that you can maximize your team's damage. You can also level Popcorn Storm first instead if you're not using a Buster team. But in any case, save Bean Soup Lake for last, as it's usually a non-factor. Paul's Noble Phantasm is an AoE that deals decent damage and has a defense down effect. Despite how simple it looks, there are a few very important things to note about this Noble Phantasm. Firstly, it is the fastest NP animation in the game, so it is perfect for speed farming. Secondly, it does just enough damage to kill hands and doors, so Paul should be core in all of your daily farming teams. And third, it applies defense down just like your third skill, so you should use it to lead off your NP chains. Paul has 2 core functions that she's very good at. First and foremost, she's an excellent farming servant. As I mentioned, her Noble Phantasm animation is quick, so it saves precious seconds in your daily runs, but also her damage is scaled just well enough so that she can kill 40 AP hands and doors easily with her Noble Phantasm. And since she's a berserker, she does bonus damage to every class. It doesn't matter which day you're farming. So if you are lacking a farming servant, she's just a godsend for you. Her second major role is that of a buster support. She may not be a Merlin or a Nightingale, but she packs tremendous value for her cost between her first and third skills, even more so if you have someone with charisma. So Paul can be an excellent budget option for supporting your strongest buster servants. On the downside though, she does have no survivability, the heal doesn't help much, and her HP is so incredibly low that she can be one-shot by nearly anything that crits once you're around Camelot or later. So even with supports, she's very difficult to keep alive. Paul is definitely not made for any long battles or mid to late game fights. Also, despite being a farming servant, she lacks an NP charge, so it can be annoying to use her if you don't have a max limit broken kaleidoscope. Therefore, when considering team comp, you should place her alongside allies that can charge her NP or keep her safe when farming. Shakespeare and Mosh are my go-to recommendations for farming if you lack a max limit broken kaleidoscope, because both of them can charge Paul's Noble Phantasm and even bolster her damage or survivability depending on what you need. If you're more in the market for a budget support, then Paul can provide excellent support to a buster servant like Bedivere, Kid Gil, or Lu Bu. Bedivere hits hard as it is, but the additional buster buff and defense down combo from Paul can drastically increase his damage. Likewise, Kid Gil has a very powerful version of charisma that pairs perfectly with Paul's buster buff for a more balanced team. The Lu Bu and Bunyan combo is recommended for really short fights where you could potentially set Lu Bu up for one-shots. Bunyan's Bond CE is Frontier. It increases party buster card effectiveness by 15%, an excellent craft essence for Paul when you're using her as a support on a buster team. Otherwise, for farming, of course, nothing beats Kaleidoscope. But if you lack Kaleidoscope, then you can go with Imaginary Number or Leyline. Both can serve as substitutes. If you're using Paul alongside a buster team, then I suggest using Holy Maiden leading Caudia or his rightful place. Otherwise, your Bond CE is your best option. There isn't much in the way of future-proofing for Paul, except maybe Aerial Drive if you really want to push her damage up. Overall, Bunyan is a servant that's made to be a gift for those in need of an efficient farming servant or buster support, and in that regard, she excels. It's hard to match the good amount of buffing or damage you get from Paul, especially given her rarity. Of course, her extreme fragility and lack of Noble Phantasm charge are cause for some concern, but at the end of the day, she is more than worth it, and I recommend leveling her as soon as possible. I don't usually give grades to 3-star and lower servants because their power levels are completely unbalanced, so let's just say Paul gets an A for adorable. And those are my thoughts on Paul. She packs incredible value for a free servant, but more importantly, she's just so damn cute. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, if you haven't seen it already, be sure to check out my Sherlock Holmes spotlight, linked both on screen right now and in the description below. Also, consider leaving a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. So Brony out. Later.